All right, here with head men's soccer coach Fred Jungemann. Coach, talk about this past weekend, what's going into practice, and just kind of as you prepare for this next week on the road as well.
Yeah, I mean, really good result on Sunday against number 3 team in the country. A couple of ties, which, no ties don't always feel good, but, decent results. Stanislaus came in and, we're coming off of a tough result the week before, and so they had a kind of chip on their shoulder and something to prove, and so that game, was a lot more difficult than I think maybe some of our guys were anticipating, and we've talked about this before. The difficulty level of the conference is such that if you step on the field and you think you should win, the game has a way of proving to you that was probably not the best choice. So you have to go onto the field and figure out how to perform, and then the result will hopefully go in your favor relative to that performance, which I think is what we were much more positive with on Sunday. Going into that game, they're a very good team. They're playing at home, and that it's always going to be a difficult game, and so you have to start the game with that mentality. You don't start the game thinking, oh, maybe today is going to be easy. Start the game playing at Chico when they're undefeated so far in the season, thinking, oh, maybe today we're going to score 6 goals on them or something like that. You start the game knowing that for 90 minutes it's going to be a battle, and if you don't prepare yourself mentally and physically, that things could go badly. And I think until we get to the point where we can have that mentality at the beginning of every single game, there's always going to be that level of inconsistency in our performances. And I think if you go back and look at our season so far, the teams that we've played really well against are the teams that we expected a tough game with, and the teams that we walked off the field feeling like we didn't put our best foot forward are probably games that they thought they should win.
When you talk about the inconsistencies, are you just kind of referencing not being mentally locked in from like the first minute, or what does that look like to you?
Yeah, from the first minute throughout the entire game. There are times where we've played games where we didn't have that necessarily particularly well in the first half, but we've kind of recovered it in the second half. Games like Dominican, Sonoma State, and even Lincoln to a certain extent, where we kind of recover it. But there's other games where we fight with that through the whole way. But if you don't start a game well, if you don't have the right mentality at the beginning of the game, and the game is harder than you think it is, it's just the nature of how our game works, is that the other team's getting more confidence and they're playing better, and as a result of that, now the game's going to be a lot more difficult than you thought it was going to be. And so whether it's effort, whether it's communication, whether it's discipline and organization, whatever aspect of our game that we're talking about, if we don't start the game and we don't have that mentality from the very beginning of the game, there's always that potential for the opponent to raise their level and either win or tie or make the game very difficult for us, whereas things could have potentially been different if we would have started with a different mindset.
And just this week, with the CCAA schedule winding down, how big of an opportunity is it for you guys to kind of catch up and get some points against teams that are ahead of you in the standings right now?
Yeah, I mean, we only have 11 games in our conference anyways, and every single game matters. Every single game, especially this season, since even the last place teams are still in contention to potentially make the conference tournament depending on how the next 5 games go. Every single game that you don't win isn't necessarily just 3 points lost, but it's also 3 points gained by somebody else that you're competing with that's trying to make it to the conference tournament. These 2 games this week, for example, East Bay and San Marcos are perfect examples. I mean, these are teams that are essentially in the same spot we are, trying to compete to get into the conference tournament. So, if we lose to East Bay, not only do we lose 3 points, but that's 3 points. So we're 6 points beyond, difference now from just trying to catch up to East Bay if we lose this game. And the same thing with San Marcos. So, from a what's at stake standpoint, these games are huge. These games are huge. I mean, not only would this be 6 points positive for us, but it's also 6 points that they wouldn't have if we can get through this weekend and with 2 results. So, yeah, every game moving forward is just as big from that standpoint. We have 5 games left, and all the teams that we're competing with in these next 5 games are also competing for us in that same scenario. So, yeah, very, very big games.
And obviously the players know their big games as well.
Yeah.
How do you go about having them be locked in from the very opening whistle, and also not feel like they're putting too much pressure on themselves to be perfect? And
Yeah, it's a fine line. There's a balance there because you need a little bit of pressure to kind of get you to focus and do the things that you need to. I think that's a little bit why, when we get lackadaisical thinking we should, this game should be easy, we don't put that kind of pressure on ourselves. And for example, in a game like Chico, that the pressure of the expectation there is that if you don't perform, this could be ugly. And so we need a little bit of that pressure, but like what you're saying is that we don't want to take it too far, that it's kind of restrictive, from that standpoint. But we talk about a lot in our program is just being present, being focused in the moment, not focusing on the consequences, because if you're thinking about consequences, you're worrying about the result. And for us, if we don't perform, the result's not coming anyways. And so in the moment, you've got to keep your focus on what's going on, what's the task in front of you in the moment in the game. You got to stay positive. You have to enjoy yourselves because, at the end of the day, we're playing a game. Yeah, there's pressure, but it's a game and it's meant to be fun. Even in a game like Chico, when you're playing against one of the top teams in the country, if you don't enjoy that moment, if you don't enjoy the opportunity to step on the field and challenge yourself against one of the best teams in the country, if that's oppressive, if that's frustrating, or if that's makes you fearful, you're never going to be successful. And so what we talk about is just being in the moment, being focused, and concentrating on the things that it takes for us to have a positive performance. And then at the end of the game, hopefully we're ahead on the scoreboard as a result of that performance, and then that gives us the opportunity to walk off the field and feel good about what we did on the field. But if we start the game with the end in mind, if we start the game worrying about the choices that we make and how they're negatively or positively going to impact the result, it's just way too muddy, way too difficult, and way too easy to get into this frustration cycle of how every single mistake that you make ultimately negatively impacts your chances of winning. And that's not a way to build confidence. It's no way to have a positive performance. So we just got to be in the moment, figure out how to be positive, and focus on the task at hand.
Coach, as we've talked about all year, this conference is probably the best Division II men's soccer conference in the country. With all the nationally ranked teams, it seems like each week you play another nationally ranked team. Going back to this weekend at Chico, and I just was curious. The first half, you got outshot. They had more opportunities from corner kicks, and you were down 1-0 at the half. But then the second half, it was kind of almost like a tale of two halves. You came out and responded really well. You outshot Chico, and you kind of, outplayed them in the second half to earn that tie. What went into that response that, at the half that you spoke with the team about, or like you mentioned earlier, sharing the field and enjoying the moment? What went into that second half performance? Was it something that was said, or was it just guys wanting to enjoy the moment and kind of playing loose? And what went into it?
I don't feel like we played bad in the first half. They had some chances. Obviously, it's a big game and against a big opponent, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking about the 2 best teams in the NBA or the NFL or whatever. When 2 good teams get together, both teams are going to create chances. Both teams are going to score points, and so it's how you react to those things and how you deal with that stuff. And there's going to be times in the game when one team is on top, and then there's going to be times when the other team is on top. And so we have to manage that stuff throughout the course of the game. And we played the game the way we wanted to in the first half. And what we said at halftime was basically just keep doing what we were doing. We anticipated that in the second half, Chico was, they're playing at home, and obviously a big game for them. And so we anticipated that they were going to be as tough as they're capable of. And so we had to match that level. We had to match that intensity, that work rate, and everything that they bring in that environment. And we did. So there wasn't anything in particular, more or less, other than keep doing what we're doing. If we keep playing positively, if we keep playing with the mindset that we have right now, we're going to get our chances. And if we can take those chances anything could happen. I mean, we conceded a goal 5 minutes into the game, but literally like 30 seconds later, we had a really good chance to tie the game. So we didn't come off the field at halftime looking at the stats or anything along those lines, thinking like we were dominated or we had a reason to be down or needing to turn things around. I felt like for me, it was our best performance of the season across the entire 90 minutes. And that's the kind of performance it takes when you step on the field against a nationally ranked opponent.
Awesome, thank you.
I got one last question if it's all good. You got a game Friday night and then you're back into it Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And I mean, last week you tied twice, but a win or a loss, the players can feel some weight, how it goes. How do you kind of maybe let them have their moment, but nip that in the bud so that they can focus on the game on Sunday?
Yeah, we try to let them have that moment in the short term. I mean, at least that night, and the next day we kind of refocus and kind of move on into the next thing. I mean, we're all human, and whether you win, you want to be excited and enthusiastic, or you lose, you want to feel down, and you got to have a mental response to that. You can't just blow that off, because if you try to devalue how much losing hurts, winning and losing are the flip side of the same coin. So if you're devaluing losing, you're simultaneously devaluing winning as well. And so if we don't give people a chance to be frustrated and upset about losses, then the value and the joy of winning also becomes minimized. So we try to give guys some time to experience either the positives and the negatives of the results, and then the next day we refocus and put that behind us, and we got another game to focus on for tomorrow, and move forward from that standpoint.
Okay, well, good luck on the road this week, Coach, and we will talk to you next week.
Yep. Thank you.